Okay, so hello everyone. This is the package team. We are going to do an investigation around an issue that we are having with an API endpoint at the group level to list container repositories under a given group. Let me share my screen. Okay, so this is the issue that we have. It's been around for a while, 5 months already. And this is the API endpoint. And the problem is that whenever someone invokes these endpoints and sets this parameter to true, Rails will pull the list of tags for each one of the repositories under the group and return that in a single response. So if a group has 10 repositories, Rails will first query the database to get the list of those repositories. So that's fast. But then if tags is set to true, Rails will issue one request per repository against the container registry to get the tag list. And that's the problem because it takes a lot if there are a lot of repositories. So I've created this issue a while ago, but there are still some open questions that we need to answer. And I was mainly concerned with the approach to invalidate a cache. So let's see, the first thing that I listed here is that we need to double check that whenever we request a token or whenever we pull from a repository or push to a repository, we always get a token from Rails, regardless if the repositories are public or not. So I think so. I looked at this not too long ago for the registry migration work, and that was the conclusion. But yeah, for demonstration purposes, let's make sure that it is the case. So what I have here, by the way, can you read this? Probably it's easier this way. Okay, so what I have here on the top side, basically, I'm putting a man in the middle proxy between the Docker clients and the GitLab registry, so that we can inspect the network requests that go from my machine to the GitLab container registry. So I have a repository. So let's try, yeah, can be this one. So first, I'm going to try to take an image and push it to a repository of my own. This is a private repository. So if we do this, access forbidden. So I have to Docker login. Login. Okay, let's try again. Let me just reset that, push it down. And let's push again. And can you give me just 1 minute so that I can open the door? And I'm back. So I just pushed an image to the registry. Now let's inspect the list of requests that happened here. So the first one, the top one, always happens. It's the client checking that the registry supports the V2 protocol. So there is a request without any authentication, and then the registry will complain and say, you need to authenticate if you want to talk to me. And this is the API endpoint that you need to hit to request the token. And then the Docker client will do so. and it will send my credentials to the server, the GitLab API endpoint, JWT/auth, and it will request a token to access the repository that I'm trying to push to. The API will return the token, and from there onwards, whenever we need to communicate with the registry, we will send an authorization header. The Docker client will fill the authorization header with a token to communicate with the GitLab registry. I'm showing the token here, but there is no problem because when this video goes live, the token will be expired already. So that is fine. We know that pushing always requests a token. If we try to pull it, to pull that image once again, same thing should happen. So same thing. We had to request a token to the GitLab API. So that's fine. Now let's try to do the same, but from a public container repository, just to make sure can be any. Can
you try something?
Uh-huh.
Can you push a second tag with a different name? I want to know if the token is reused somehow.
No, that is that. Yeah, let's try that. So. And let's reset. Let's push. So you always requests a token before any of the operations, even if it's the exact same operation multiple times. It will request a token again and again and again. Yeah, so that should be fine.
Okay.
So yeah, so the next thing is trying to pull an image from a public repository. Can be this one. And do, yeah, so same thing. It will fetch the token for that, even though it is a public repository, it will request a token regardless. And it will download the image, which is pretty large. So let's stop that. So yeah, I think we can close this one. We always get a token from the Rails API before pulling or pushing to a repository, regardless if it is public or not. And then the second point that I have here is related with third-party registries, which may not or will not authenticate with the GitLab API. And that means that we can't rely on it for this feature, which means that this feature, caching the tag lists, can only be done for GitLab.com and for self-managed using the GitLab container registry. I think that's fine because right now the main problem that we have is with GitLab.com. We could ship this for self-managed as well, but there determining the version of the registry is not that accurate. We do have, I think we still do have in place something to detect that version and vendor, but it may change. And the priority is really GitLab.com. So that should be fine. Regardless, yeah, I think we should put this behind the feature flag and then make sure that it only works first for GitLab.com. And that's it. I think we already have something like that or had for cleanup policies, right? We do a check if we are in GitLab.com or not.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, so it would be something similar, a feature flag, or checking if it is GitLab.com and then checking if the feature flag is enabled. And the next one, Redis or database. Yeah, I think this is another question Redis should be the place to go. I guess some of the work that you did or are doing now for the cleanup policies caching should be easy to apply to this as well, or at least the knowledge from it, which is good. And in the end, the only thing that we need to store is really the container repository ID as key, and then the value is the list of tags, and that's it. There might be some concerns about size because for some repositories there are like thousands and thousands of tags, and those tags can be large in name. Like if they are a commit hash, they are like 40 shards length. If you have 5,000 tags, that's a lot of tags, but still, I think that's not a problem. Although we can validate with a Redis expert, but I think we should be fine. And then making sure that we can first fill that cache and then empty the cache whenever a token is requested. So basically, if someone tries to write stuff or delete stuff from a repository, once we generate the token, we need to reset the tag list cache and assume that the repository is going to change. And so in the next query to that endpoint, we need to retrieve the tag list once again. I think yeah, so yeah, so once or before we hand over the token in the authentication service, we have to reset the cache here if authorized actions includes push or delete. So that should be easy to do, and because it's Redis, there is no problem of requiring a right database connection here, which would be problematic. So I think that's the easy part. I think probably the most difficult part is that ideally we would only use the cache for the group endpoint. So instead of doing it on the container registry clients, we would do it somewhere higher up so that it only applies to that group level endpoints of the API. Let's see if I can.
It's group container repositories.
Yeah, so it's this one, it gets the repositories list and then does the pagination using that entity. Yeah, and this is the parameter that may be true. And if it is true, it's going to expose tags, and I guess tags comes from the container.
Actually, it's both parameters. If tags or tags count are true, they will trigger a call to the container registry.
Yeah, so it should be tags from the container repository model, and then this one will look at the manifests, and if the manifest is not filled, it's going to the client, and then the client will hit the registry API. So if we did the caching here, that would mean that it would apply to every single functionality that retrieves the tag list from the container registry. And I think that's a bad idea because a problem with it would impact everything, like UI, normal API requests, even cleanup policies as well. So ideally, we would do it as close to the group level endpoints as possible. So do you think we can do it? David?
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's a good idea to start with the API. Well, if it works well, we can always think about digging the caching deeper. But the
Yeah.
API is a good starting point. When do you cache things? When on the first call on this API?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that works. So basically the first, well, whenever it is called, before going to the registry, we check if the entry exists in Redis. If it is, we read from there. If not, we let it go to the registry and then fill the cache. But yeah, basically do that check for every single request. Check if the repository cache entry is filled. If not, fill it from there. And yeah, I think it's better to do it just for the API. And even we can probably even go further and wrap this with a project level feature flag, so that we can enable it just for there are only, I think, 2 or 4 projects which are causing performance problems in production, and they all belong to the same top level namespace. So we can even do that at the API level and make it even more specific by only targeting that namespace or those 4 projects where this is currently a problem. And if it works great, then we can extend it, like with a percentage-based rollout, to others.
That could be a bit complex to do, to have a feature flag scope to a project level, because we directly get the container repositories from the Finder, which use the group. And well, in short, you don't pull projects. You just pull the container repositories out of a single group. And
Okay.
so we don't have the projects.
But for example, here you could still get it, right? So this one must be instances of container repository, right?
Yeah.
And from there you could check. It's not listed here, but yeah, but I remember you can check the top level namespace, or you can even .project and it will give you the project. So we could perhaps use that, and before serving, because the thing is, if we, for project, maybe it's not a good idea, but we could likely do it for group, right? Because the API is at the group level. So it will always be the same group for every container repository. So you just need to get the group of you're getting here, basically.
Yeah, that would be easier.
Yeah, so we can do it by group. I think that makes sense, and we have it here. And we would limit that to that specific top level group that is causing problems right now on GitLab.com. And if it works, we could do a percentage-based rollout for everyone else, just for the API. And then if it works great, we can extend it beyond the API. But yeah, invalidating cache and all of that, it's always tricky. So it's easy to get into trouble. So the smallest we start, the better, I think.
Yeah, we need both. We need the application setting that says that we are using a GitLab registry and we are on GitLab.com. And the other thing is the feature flag on a project.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's this one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think probably the main question is where we need to intercept that these requests to fill the cache or read from the cache. But yeah, probably here at the API level, and then what's the best data structure to save this in Redis, taking into account that the list of values can grow large. I think on average from the analysis that we did to the inventory, I think the average tag count per repository is like 10 or 20 tags, right, Sally? More, less?
I think it's way less. I think the average repository has 2 tags, maybe.
Okay, yeah. So on average, it's not a problem, but if we take into account the ones that are likely to cause problems, those should have like thousands of them. So yeah, it's better to err on the safe side and come up with an estimation for the size of those values in Redis. Based on that, like assume that all tags will be as large as possible on the name, like 40 shards for the git commit hash, and assume that repositories will have like 5,000 tags or something, and then pick a structure that will fit that.
We don't an expiration. We don't need an expiration on the keys on Redis, right?
Yeah,
because we will expire them manually. So if we don't need that, we can use the Rails multi-write command that we write to Redis in a single Redis command. And actually, the nice thing with that is that it will take the value, serialize it, and then you can, there is an option to compress the value, because the serialization output is a string, and then you have an option to compress that string. That could
yeah
help.
Yeah, that makes sense, because yeah, compressing that will certainly save a lot of space.
Yeah, so I misspoke about the tag counts. So the average is 20, but 76% of repositories do have an average of, the 75% lowest repositories do have an average of 2. And so it's the 25% highest that have an average of 82. So hockey stick.
Yeah. I think that's okay, and we will have a limited set of repositories cached, at least for now, so we can always change the structure if it starts to cause problems. But I think I think that should be fine.
Do we need an API somehow to reset the cache? Could that be useful?
Don't we have helpers for that already?
Yeah. I mean, having a REST API to call, and it will reset this cache of the list of tags. Because we are using like non-expiring keys, and if you run into bugs, you might want to reset the cache or something like that.
I think well, for GitLab.com, maybe that's not a good idea if this goes to self-managed. Yeah, maybe, but given that we will start small and just enable this for a couple of namespaces, if there is a problem, we can expire it manually, or support can expire it manually, or we can even disable the feature flag. So I guess we should be fine without it for a first iteration.
Yeah, it was more for follow-up iterations, not the first one.
Yeah, I mean, if it turns out to work great, yeah, then we will have to think about how to make it scale, like apply to everything. But in the end, I don't think we will want to apply to everything. Like when you are on the UI, maybe it's not a good idea to use that cache. But yeah, let's see. I think starting small makes our life easier as well. Yep, so I can think of any problem. Yeah, the main question for me was whether we would be able to intercept that at a higher level, because doing it at the lower level would be too impactful and risky. But yeah, other than that, I think we're good.
My only concern is really the size of the values in Redis, but since we are starting with a feature flag, we can control that growth more or less. So yes, it's okay.
Yeah, I guess we could use a list for that, but we could just also use a string with concatenated values. I don't know how the serialization work with Redis does it, but probably it will use a list and not a string if you pass it an array.
I think I don't recall the code of active support, but it has some serializations for specific types, and all the other types it will use a JSON serializer, I think. So you get a string output, and then you can just compress that output further.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the main question. So yeah, I think we can make a row calculation, like worst case scenario. We expect the list to have this size, and then probably request some feedback from Redis experts, maybe Andrew or Bob. Yeah, and they should be able to help us find the optimal solution. But again, yeah, just because we are starting with just a couple of groups, it won't be a problem straight out of the bat. Okay, so I think I'm going to drop the conclusions here, and then we can open a thread to discuss the format in Redis. And that's it. I think we have an implementation plan. Do you have any other concerns? Cool. So let me just stop sharing and stop recording. Thanks, everyone.